is Rachel Ryan, and this is my final video summary for teaching science K through 6 on Global Campus. My background is a little noisy. I live in a house with 10 other people, so you might hear some children screaming or music upstairs. I apologize for that. And I'll also be reading off of my script that I typed out. So for the first question on the list, it was misconceptions and explaining what a misconception is. And a misconception, as defined, as an idea that is wrong because it is based on a failure to understand a certain situation. In every class and every subject there are plenty of misconceptions, but in science those misconceptions can be extremely problematic, as those can interfere with a child's learning. If they have a hard time letting go of previous misconceptions, they will have a hard time correcting those and being willing to listen to proper science instruction and the truths and facts about what is really going on and not just their misconceptions. But these misconceptions can also lead to a deeper learning experience. A common science misconception for younger children regarding living things is that humans are not animals, and also another common misconception is that some students confuse cells with molecules, and those are both misconceptions that, if corrected at an earlier age, will help the progression of their learning. As for leverage of student misconceptions of common science phenomena in your future classroom, I just put to remember to focus on the facts and why right is right before addressing potential misconceptions in a class, using those misconceptions to help teach them, to build upon those. And we as teachers sometimes fail to see that our students have unresolved conflict between what we or the textbook are attempting to teach the students' everyday experiences. Progression of the standards. The progression of the standards in means in regards to the NGSS is just an increasing sophistication of student learning, such as MAPS and the progression of that. Just a second. Whoop. Let me go back to my things. For instance, plate tectonics and a large-scale system interactions. In early learning, K through 2, maps show where things are located. One can map the shapes and kinds of land and water in any area. As their learning progresses in 3rd through 5th grade, they learn more about Earth's physical features and how they occur in patterns, as do earthquakes and volcanoes. And maps can be used to locate features and determine patterns in those events. Up into 6th through 8th grade, plate tectonics is the unifying theory that explains movements of rocks, that Earth's surface and geological history, and that maps are used to display evidence of this plate movement. Basically, the progression of standards is just starting at a young age and things building upon each other. That's my understanding of it. For my role as a 5th grade teacher, focusing on this matter standard, 5 PS1-3, making observations and movements to identify materials based on their properties. Where are my notes? So just focusing on the information that they learned before 5th grade, to build upon that about how matter cycles between the air and the soil among organisms live and die, and then building upon that. Progression of standard, just following along with their knowledge that they learned beforehand, making sure to check for background knowledge, using the proper assessments and pre-assessments before your lessons to ensure that you don't need to take a step back and relearn some things, clear up some common misconceptions about the science standard, and also setting them up to be ready for the next coming grades to be more susceptible and more engaged, and to be able to take in information as they progress in their learning. For the 5E learning cycle, those cycles are the stages of this are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And the purpose for each of these, the teacher, during the engage stage, the teacher is to, the expectations for teacher is to create interest, generate curiosity, questions, identify what the students know, gather background knowledge. The student is expected to ask questions and show interest in this topic. For the explore stage, the teacher encourages students to work together without direct instruction. This is where the teacher will step back and observe and listen to students as they interact. A teacher can ask probing questions to redirect investigations, acts more of a consultant for students than directly teaching them. It provides time for students to puzzle through these problems. During this stage, the student can think freely within the limits of the activity, test their predictions, form new predictions, and record their observations. For the explain stage, the teacher encourages their students to explain concepts and definitions in their own words, asks for evidence and clarification. This is where they formally provide definitions, and uses the students' previous experiences as a basis for explaining concepts. The students are to explain possible solutions or answers to others, listen critically to other students' explanations, questions other explanations, refers to previous activities, etc. For elaborate, the teachers expect students to use formal definitions and explanations, encourages students to apply the concepts and skills in new situations, and refers students to data and evidence, asking, what do you already know? Why do you think this? A student, this is where they apply new labels, definitions, explanations, etc., use previous information to ask questions, propose answers, record their observations, and check for understanding among their peers. For the last stage, evaluate, teacher observes students as they apply these new concepts and skills. This is where a new form of activity or assessment would be in place. They assess students' knowledge of the topic, look for evidence that students have changed their thinking, have any of these previous misconceptions been corrected. They allow the students to assess their own learning and group process skills, asking open-ended questions such as, why do you think, what evidence do you have, etc. This is where the student would evaluate his or her own progress and knowledge and ask questions related, or ask related questions that would encourage future investigations. For the engineering design process, there are 5 steps to this engineering design process, the guide 5 steps, using terms that children can understand. The first step is ask, what's the problem? Imagine, what are some solutions? Brainstorm ideas. Plan, draw a diagram. Create, follow your plan and create something. Improve, what works, what doesn't, etc., etc. And this is flexible. There are many variations of this model. This could be used in a science project where the students are possibly, like, say that they are creating a volcano, asking questions, doing research. What are some solutions to this problem? How can they fix things that are not working? Drawing up a plan for what they're going to do, create their actual project, test it out, and then see what improvements they can make for this. As for feedback, one of the assignments that I found to be the most helpful was the science misconception interview or assignment with a student. I did this with two second graders, and it was really helpful for me to see the difference between the two second graders who were in two completely different classrooms. One, in fact, was a homeschool child, and to kind of see the balance between the two of them, and just having the freedom to do that. Because I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about homeschool children, especially that they aren't learning as much, and my interview and activities with them showed that that was definitely not the case. They were right, alongside with the public school second grader, in fact, knew quite a bit more about science. I think it helped that her dad was a science professor at K-State, but that's besides the point. I feel like this class was very helpful to me, and I enjoyed it very much. So, thank you.